All right, joining us now to discuss this is Senator Ron Johnson, Republican of Wisconsin. He also is the chair of the Homeland Security Committee. Senator Johnson, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Jim. How are you doing?
Doing well. Now, you just heard what President Trump said in last night's rally in Pennsylvania. North Korea is, quote, thinking about denuclearizing, but, quote, who knows what's going to happen. Is that enough of an assurance for you, for the president to sit down with Kim Jong-un? Is that enough?
Well, President Trump has been engaged in the maximum pressure campaign, and I joined in a letter with 5 other of my Republican Senate colleagues encouraging President Trump to make sure to maintain that maximum pressure until we see complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization within North Korea. So what we can't do is we can't do what we did with Iran and let off the pressure and then just watch the behavior go in the wrong direction. So again, it's just incredibly important to keep, I would say, ratchet up the sanctions against North Korea until they actually do, in a verifiable fashion, denuclearize.
Okay. Now, North Korea has backed out of promises before. In 1994, they promised to end their nuclear program, but they were found later in violation of that. In 2005, they agreed to give up their nuclear program, but they started up again next year. They tested their first bomb, and then in 2012, they said they would stop testing, but later launched a satellite. Is the president just being naive here?
Let's hope not. Again, you have that history. Let's not be snookered again. Let's not be Charlie Brown to North Korea's Lucy. We've seen this movie before. That's why we've called on President Trump to make sure that we maintain the maximum pressure campaign. If anything, I would continue to ratchet up sanctions until they, again, have complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization.
Isn't it possible they would back out of the talks before they even happen if you ratchet up sanctions? Seems like the president really wants to have this conversation.
Well, again, if you listen to members of his administration, they're pretty level-headed from a standpoint of we need to make sure that we continue to maintain that pressure. And from my standpoint, continue the pressure will bring North Korea to the table in a more good faith negotiations.
And the president also said, quote, we have to be very nice to Kim Jong-un. This is a dictator who has murdered untold numbers of people. What do you think the president is going to accomplish by being nice to Kim Jong-un?
Probably not a whole lot. What we need to do is maintain that pressure. We have to recognize the heinous acts committed by Kim Jong-un and, again, maintain the maximum pressure. It's that simple. And
I'm just correct me if I'm wrong here, Senator, I'm sensing from your voice that you're not so sure this is a good idea, sitting down with Kim Jong-un. You think it's a good idea?
You know, I think talking to people is never a bad idea as long as you maintain that pressure. I've never quite understood, the enormous diplomatic gain by just sitting down and talk to somebody as long as you maintain the pressure. So I'd rather talk to people to prevent any kind of miscalculation. And let's face it, miscalculation on the Korean Peninsula could be devastating. So I don't have a problem in talking to people, but we have to maintain.
Well, this isn't talking to people. This is talking to Kim Jong-un. This isn't. This is a very different ballgame.
Well, again, I think the maximum pressure campaign is having its effect. We need to isolate North Korea. They say they're self-sufficient. Well, we're putting them in a position where they're going to have to prove self-sufficiency, and of course they're not. And I think that maximum pressure campaign is bringing Kim Jong-un to the table for the first time, hopefully in good faith.
All right, well, and I want to talk about these new tariffs that the president announced on steel and aluminum. You've expressed your opposition to this. It obviously could affect the economy in Wisconsin. Your fellow Republican Senator Jeff Flake has gone so far as to threaten congressional action to nullify all of this. Would you sign on to that? Would you support that?
I would, but I doubt it'd have any chance of passing, and even if passed, doubt we'd have the votes to override the veto. What's unfortunate, Jim, is in Wisconsin, I just traveled the last 2 days talking to all kinds of folks. Confidence had really been building. We stopped increasing the regulatory burden, actually started reducing the regulatory burden. We made American businesses more competitive. We gave real tax cuts to Wisconsinites and Americans. There's a really growing level of optimism because we were returning certainty to the American and Wisconsin economy. And, the talk of canceling NAFTA and now imposing these steel tariffs have just interjected uncertainty into the economy where it just wasn't necessary. So I'm really concerned that this is counterproductive, as well as you could really result in retaliatory actions by our trade partners. And again, it just injects uncertainty into an economy that was really doing quite well.
And I want to get back to this rally that we saw last night. The president was in rare form, or perhaps not so rare form. Take a listen to the president making the case for the death penalty for drug dealers. Let's listen to this.
When I was in China, and other places, by the way, I said, Mr. President, do you have a drug problem? No, 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 we do not. I said, big country, 1.4 billion people, right? Not much of a drug problem. I said, what do you attribute that to? Well, the death penalty. So honestly, I don't know that the United States, frankly, is ready for it. They should be ready for it.
Now, the death penalty for drug dealers, is that something that you agree with? And should we be following China's lead when it comes to criminal justice?
I would say we probably should not be following China's lead when it comes to criminal justice. I'm a supporter of the death penalty, but only when in those types of instances where we absolutely are 100% certain that the person is 100% guilty. I'm not sure it'd be applicable to drug offenses.
And the NRA is suing the state of Florida to block a new law that the governor just signed there, Rick Scott, that would raise the legal age to buy all guns to 21 years old. The NRA saying that it violates the constitutional rights of 18 to 21-year-old people. What do you make of that? Do you feel like that this law violates the Second Amendment? How far should the law go in that regard?
I would not support the law. We send our sons and daughters over to Afghanistan, in Iraq. They defend our freedoms. I think if they do that, they ought to be able to have the right to buy a hunting rifle.
What about an AR-15?
Support that law.
An AR-15 to 18-year-olds with AR-15s, that's okay?
I think we ought to do is we ought to really detail what the operational characteristics are of weapons rather than just a scary name or a gun that looks a little bit scarier. There are plenty of hunting weapons that basically have the same operational characteristics. Let's define the operational characteristics. And it's already illegal to have a fully automatic weapon. It's illegal to convert a legal weapon into an automatic weapon. So I would much rather concentrate on verifiable operational characteristics, and then we could evaluate weapons based on that.
Okay, Senator Ron Johnson, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Have a great day.
All right, you too. Thank you, sir.